We need it. Like oxygen. Why we breathe it. Like water. Like a fox. Like a fox. Like a fox.
Hi, everyone. We've got another great edition of our podcast here today, Women in Tech, Like a Boss. And I'm really excited to bring to you our guest. Her name is Casey Quinlan. She's got 25 years of experience in broadcasting. She's worked at NBC. She's been a stand-up comedian, and she is the founder of Mighty Casey Media, which company she founded about 14 years ago. Today, she serves as a comedy health analyst. Hi, Casey.
Hello, Loralyn, and how are you, dear?
I am good, all things considered. Yourself?
Yeah. Hello. We're all on pandemic lockdown here, so yeah.
Well, that's key. So let's dive right into the questions, because I'm sure listeners are going to be anxious to hear about the kinds of things that you have to share. Tell us a little bit about Mighty Casey Media. You founded it, 14 years ago?
Yeah, in 2006, I started it as I ran screaming from the network television news party. And I hung out my shingle essentially as a communication consultant. Then about near the end of year 2, I ended up in what became a pivot into healthcare with a cancer diagnosis. And because of my background as a journalist and also my time as a family caregiver, I ended up recognizing that this cancer diagnosis was a message from the universe that I was supposed to pivot into healthcare now. So I did. And, as far as what stage my company is at, I don't think I've ever really gotten out of startup and, figure out what the right penetrating message might be. So I'm kind of in perpetual startup.
Well, that's all right. Let's talk about being in sort of startup mode, which is a lot of our listenership. What are the kinds of things you're seeking now to help your business grow?
Well, obviously opportunities to offer either my expertise or the expertise of groups that I can assemble from this, top-down ivory tower, and then in the United States, most expensive, horrifying thing in the universe, and turn it into something that's actually more human/humane/humanity serving. Basically putting the patient voice more at the center and designing from the outside in, because the entire system needs to be redesigned and they're not asking the end users. So that's where I come in handy.
And maybe that speaks to our next question, which is all along like your practice's mission and your effort, as a comedy health analyst. Is that fair?
That's very fair. And I will immediately move to the if you build it, they will come thing only works in movies about, or fantasies about baseball starring Kevin Costner. In other words, if you build it, they will not come unless you ask them first what the hell it was they were wanting. Because people need healthcare, but the problem is the healthcare system as it's designed is very, sort of top down, led by experts, and just the fact that it takes 17 years for 50% of frontline clinicians to adopt proven science, it tells you everything you need to know about how we need to fix this mess.
Pretty much. And again, that really speaks, I guess, to your vision on how you're trying to change the world. In a nutshell, how would you describe it?
Well, I'm trying to flip the script entirely on where the ideas for retooling healthcare and the healthcare delivery system come from. In other words, it shouldn't be death by 1,000 pilots. You should go directly to the community that you serve and form sort of a consortium. And yes, this will involve paying some of these people, figure out how to retool the healthcare system to better deliver care to the community that is served by that healthcare institution.
Let's talk a little bit about how your practice at Mighty Casey Media and your efforts as a comedy health analyst are actually changing lives.
Well, it is a mission to change the world, full stop. And I am not the only, sort of person or company or practitioner in that zone. There are more of us on the daily, but my vision of changing the world is actually flattening the landscape where we end white coat syndrome, not because people are no longer wearing white coats. Sometimes those are useful, those white coats. But at the same time, not having that sort of, eminence-led, I would prefer more evidence-led, and I want the average human to understand and have more access to the ideas contained in that evidence and why the science that supports healthcare is important.
In your capacity as a patient community leader, leads to my next question. What do you think gives you the edge and makes you a good leader?
Well, because I see my role as interpreting, sort of a translator or interpreter of all of the, polysyllabic bureaucraties that, is used in the academic pursuit of medical excellence. And then down at the bottom, it's like, well, okay, but how do I do that from the patient perspective? I'm a journalist and researcher by training and by practice. And so I do deep dives into trying to figure out WTF, this science or these stories that are emerging, et cetera, are saying, and then translate them for the average human. And adding humor really helps there.
Absolutely. We all need a laugh every once in a while and to get through the big words, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's the hardest thing you've ever had to do?
Well, really, I suppose it's, giving up the idea of ever actually earning enough money to live, because back, in the broadcasting days, those were lovely. I pulled down the big salary, but giving that up to do more good for people is kind of where I've ended up over the last, let's say, 10 to 12 years. And that was hard, but I don't regret a minute of it.
Is that part of the reason of why you do what you do, to help so many others?
Well, totally. Because I never had kids, and I was always off covering news or talking my way out of police custody in Saudi Arabia. True story. But I'm not, the only legacy I'm going to leave is if I manage to do more good in the world than just taking up space. So that's why I do what I do. I want to leave the world a better place, particularly in the healthcare zone. Done.
What gives you your edge?
Well, I think it's the humor, although there is barely contained rage often within, the humor that I throw out there. Some of my colleagues, in fact, Lewis Black, who was on comedy circuit in New York when I was back almost 30 years ago now, he was a little ahead of me, but his sort of barely contained rage, I try to talk people awake, and if they won't wake up, I smack them. That's it.
There you go. It's got to be done, right?
Right.
How is your practice different from everyone else's?
Well, I think because I constantly battle to bring things into terms that an average human being can understand. Certainly I speak academic-ese because I have to translate it. But the way that I approach things can a 10-year-old, a fifth grader, understand this? And if not, we're not doing a good enough job at telling the story. We have to tell a story that anyone can understand, cast themselves in or find themselves in, and then act accordingly.
On the bad days, what gives you the strength to keep going, Casey?
Well, the fact that I'm not alone, there are a rising number of us. And when I say us, I mean, sort of patient side or ground level or grassroots, evangelists, activists, consultants, pick your word. But there's enough of us that we can kind of gather together on Zoom calls or actually in the room when we're not all going to die from being close to each other. But, there are enough of us that we kind of can lift each other up, and we can also share the work.
Oh, the power of teamwork and the sense of community, right? Everybody wants to be part of the tribe.
Oh, yeah.
Working towards
humans are
goal.
tribe animals. We're pack
Absolutely.
animals. So we don't do, unless you're Ted Kaczynski. That's another story. Yeah, well, look where he ended up.
That's right. Exactly. Right. So what's holding you back from being wildly successful?
Oh, God, the warm handshakes and cold bagels compensation scheme. Oh, my God. $4 trillion washes through the U.S. healthcare system every year. We are invited to the party, but we're fed cold bagels, given a warm handshake in compensation, and told thanks for showing up and doing all this work. And we're like project managers a lot of the time in a lot of these community involvement things that hospitals and health systems are doing. And so what's holding us all back from being wildly successful is, in fact, we're always broke because no one's paying us. So I'm fighting to kill the warm handshakes and cold bagels compensation scheme and actually have us on the radar as paid consultants.
Cheers to that. Let's hope that goes forward. Now, on my next question, our readers may or may not know this that don't know you, but a lot of people, regret having tattoos and things. And I know that you put a 6x6 inch QR code.
3. It's not 6. That would be a little over the top.
Oh, my error. So it's 3x3 QR code that directs people to all of your medical health information.
Yeah, it doesn't scan anymore, though. It only did for about 2 years. I knew I only had a window.
Well, still, okay, there's the idea behind it. But it does tie into the next question. A lot of people regret tattoos and things. And, you look back at your past. What would be different? Would you change anything?
Not one damn thing.
Amazing. That's the first time I've heard that answer. You're an author and I've read your book, but are there other books that you'd recommend we'd read?
Well, if I have to pull out one, I would recommend reading Ruined by Design by Mike Monteiro, Monteiro, is the book that I recommend everybody read.
Well, in addition to that, maybe our readers would want to know, something else about you or even about your book.
Well, my book was written as I was going through cancer treatment. It's not about it's not a you can survive cancer book because there's only been 9 million of those written. I wrote it about managing medical care through anything. And it was pinned to my breast cancer journey because that's what I was going through. But I also had been, as I mentioned earlier, a family caregiver. My dad had Parkinson's. My mother had a bizarre, pituitary tumor that had all kinds of sequelae over the next 22 years. So there was just a lot of experiences that I had. I also was a journalist, covering some health stuff.
You've been in broadcasting and tech in general for a long time. Can you share your best tip for the next generation of women in tech?
Design from the outside in. Never leave the end user, whoever that is, off of the initial framing of the project or idea.
So Casey, you've been podcasting for a long time as well. Can you tell our listeners about your podcast?
Well, it's funny because I've been doing podcast production for medical societies since, probably 10 years now. But I woke up 2 years ago, kind of on April 1st, and it was April 1st, with a V8 forehead slap saying, oh my God, I could do my own. So I now do a weekly podcast called Healthcare is Hilarious. In other words, it doesn't really deliver what it should. Your mileage will always vary. Your bill will definitely vary. And I talk about all of that, data science, et cetera. So it's something new every week.
You've got plenty of ideas.
I got ideas. I got pitchfork preventers.
Last question. Hopefully there's no pitchforks on your shoes here, but if your shoe style was your personality, are you a boots, stilettos, sneakers, flats, or flip-flops kind of gal?
Well, I live in bare feet at home, so I'd probably say flip-flops, but I have everything else except for stilettos. With my knees, stilettos are no longer possible.
Well, fantastic, Casey. Thank you so much for taking time today on our Like a Boss podcast. And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?